Disney has a problem on their hands. Well, other than the fiasco that is the current Star Wars franchise. No, this problem is more of a problem child. Deadpool. See, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is founded on the idea of consistency. Consistent tone, quality, and most importantly, continuity. Other than a few small recasts like Rhodey or Red Skull, there is one single coherent canon across every movie. And that canon, while shakily connected to the Netflix shows, is definitely going to extend to the new Disney Plus shows. All of Phase 4 and beyond is going to remain as interconnected and congruent as the past three phases. This is why the X-Men, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, and Blade all have to be recast and rewritten for this new universe. If they weren't, there would be a ton of confusing loose ends. The MCU has been and will continue to be consistent, and this is the polar opposite of everything the Fox X-Men universe was built upon. Those movies had a new continuity or timeline introduced with every single film. Characters would remain the same age across 3 different decades. The history of Charles Xavier becoming crippled was retconned after First Class. Wolverine's time spent in the Weapon X program was forgotten about in Days of Future Past. Dark Phoenix happened 2 different times with 2 different versions of Jean Grey. And of course, there's the abomination that was X-Men Origins Wolverine and Deadpool. But speaking of our favorite merc with a mouth, Deadpool thrived in this loosey-goosey universe because of the nature of his character. He's made for comedy and has the ability to make meta commentary. The confusing Fox continuity was perfect cannon fodder for Deadpool's fourth wall breaking jokes. It's almost as if this confusing movie universe was made for a character like Deadpool. But that's not to say that Wade Wilson couldn't also thrive in a world like the MCU. He would just have to make slightly different jokes. A loose continuity is not required for a Deadpool story to be good. There are plenty of other things to joke about, especially with a change in continuity. The mere fact that things seem to make more sense now than they used to is enough for a zinger itself. But the problem arises when we consider what our new Deadpool will look like. We already have the absolute perfect actor to portray Wade, Ryan Reynolds, but this clashes with the MCU and their strict rules about having a cohesive universe. They didn't allow for Andrew Garfield to be Spider-Man or Wesley Snipes to be Blade, but with Deadpool, we simply don't want him to be recast. I don't think anyone does. Not the fans, not Kevin Feige, not anyone at Disney. So how do we handle this situation? Well, one way to handle casting too perfect to change is to do it like J. Jonah Jameson from Spider-Man Far From Home. J.K. Simmons had the absolute best performance in this role during his run in the Sam Raimi trilogy. Recasting him as anyone else would have been a mistake, so when it was time for JJ to appear in the MCU, Disney just kept Simmons in the role, but they altered it slightly. This version of Jameson runs an online news website instead of the newspaper version of the Daily Bugle, and he has a bald top instead of the Raimi version's more classic square crew cut. Now, should we do this with Deadpool? Keep Ryan Reynolds in the role, but change his look and backstory in order to differentiate him from the previous Fox version? I don't think this is a good idea. It's better than recasting, but it's still not great. The fact of the matter is, Deadpool was done perfectly in his 2 Fox films. From the look of his suit, to the writing, to the balance of comedy and drama, his backstory was perfectly tragic and dark. It contrasted his jovial nature seamlessly. To rewrite Deadpool or Cable's stories for this new universe would be a major disservice to how well they were executed in the first place, and would arguably make things even more confusing. If Deadpool was joking about being bought by Disney, but he had a new backstory, well, which Deadpool is it? Is he really the same one, or is he someone different? I know you're not supposed to take a joke character like Wade Wilson too seriously, but the nerd part of my brain, and the nerd parts of millions of other viewers' brains, would be irked by this. So, here is how you actually solve it. The second movie ended with Deadpool jumping all throughout time to goof around in the past, to kill himself in X-Men Origins, to kill Ryan Reynolds before he accepted the script for Green Lantern, and to save his girlfriend. Obviously, these were all just a bunch of jokes, but I'm assuming the fact that he saved Vanessa is something that they were going to build upon in the third film. So, in the new Deadpool 3, we start out with Wade and Vanessa living together, much like the start of Deadpool 2. Maybe Colossus is there, whatever. You have a fun scene to get everyone comfortable, and you have one of them comment that things have felt off recently. But all of a sudden, the whole room gets torn down and a wormhole pops up out of nowhere. And you can have a fun sequence where Wade tries to save himself, save Vanessa, save his Voltron collectible figures, as they all get sucked away into nothingness. And then, he wakes up on the street outside. You can introduce a Watcher, or a Celestial, or any cosmic being, it doesn't matter which, it could even be Doctor Strange, and they all tell Deadpool that it was because he was messing with time, it caused some sort of temporal nonsense and collapsed his timeline into this other one. Luckily, the anomaly was centered around Wade for the most part, so very little about this universe has been affected. Wade can make a joke about how Disney's lawyers sure do dress funny, and then bam! You've successfully integrated this version of Deadpool that we all know and love with the same backstory, look, abilities, and actor all into the MCU. From here on out, the movie can be all about Wade figuring out exactly what his life is like now. Which of the other characters from his old universe still exist here, including his enemies. You could even center the main plot around an enemy from this new universe attacking Deadpool for something he never actually did. You basically have free reign with this setup to tell any kind of story that you'd want. Whatever is done with Deadpool here, the point is that this film exists to establish the new status quo. Afterward, the character is free to appear in any other MCU film you might want him in. He can be in a cameo, a guest appearance, a team member, maybe he just shows up for a couple seconds to kill a couple alien invaders in the next big Avengers movie. Whatever you do with him, the important part is that he is a concrete part of the MCU, still played by Ryan Reynolds, and us nerdy fans will have an explanation for how it all works. Now, personally, I would want him to keep his quippy fourth wall breaking comments, but I would step it up a notch. Instead of having Deadpool be the only weird one surrounded by a ton of straight men, I would lump him into stories that include some of the other goofy characters in the MCU. I'm talking Howard the Duck, Squirrel Girl, those types of characters. Think that in the same way that the Guardians of the Galaxy movies are much sillier than the rest of the MCU, but they can still exist and take part in the big serious crossovers like Endgame, Deadpool should interact with an even weirder new portion of the MCU, one more concerned with comedy than anything else, and he could still take part in the big crossovers. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is supposed to be more of a horror film. Shang-Chi is going to be a kung fu action movie. The Eternals is a gigantic epic spanning thousands of years. So why not include a straight-up comedy in this rapidly expanding universe? As long as the continuity remains in check, let things breathe a little bit. Diversity in tone isn't a bad thing, so include Deadpool, give him a cast of other silly Marvel characters to bounce off of, and let it rip. What's the worst that could happen? They don't break $1 billion in one of their 4 annual movie releases, not including merchandise sales? I think they'll be fine. But once you've set up this new comedic portion of the MCU, you have to make sure the crossovers are handled correctly. James Gunn was given creative control over the Guardians scenes in the last 2 Avengers films. That meant that the comedy and the drama were balanced just right, without sacrificing the tonal integrity of the Guardians movies or the Avengers movies. With Deadpool in the MCU, you can't have him act as goofy as he normally would in crossovers. He can't break the fourth wall as frequently, he can't meddle with time or continuity as haphazardly, and he won't be able to swear as brazenly. At first glance, this may seem like a problem. No one wants a diet Deadpool. But if we take another look, I think it'll actually be okay. We laugh when Star-Lord defeats his villains by initiating a dance-off or creating a giant Pac-Man, but we aren't upset when he doesn't use that sort of strategy against Thanos in an Avengers movie. Tonality can be tweaked without being ruined. A dialed-down Deadpool will not be as grating as you might first think, and so I really believe that his presence could work in big crossovers. At this point, all you really have to explain is the absence of mutants in the MCU. I'll be honest, I'm not touching that one. After the whole Inhumans debacle on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they technically exist all over the world, although they're never mentioned in the movies. To somehow balance that with the whole planet full of mutants that nobody's heard of up until now, yeah, no thanks. Kevin Feige can figure it out. I'm sure he gets paid enough. Or maybe the next Doctor Strange movie will introduce the multiverse and wipe out all established canon and then shove it under the rug, making this entire video pointless. Who knows? Anyway, thanks for watching, I guess. I'm not sure if I put enough Deadpool references in this video, so I'll just throw a couple here at the end. Chimichangas, Maximum Effort, Hugh Jackman, Dubstep. Alright, that should do it. Make sure to like, subscribe, ring that bell, and consider supporting me on Patreon. Thank you to all my patrons, and a special thank you to Evilly Nice Nava. Stay frosty.